Welcome to Automated Visual Software Analytics. This part is about the software map theme called Risk of Knowledge Strain. In this part, we will explore the phenomenon of knowledge strain. We will describe software maps that depict this phenomenon, the risk of knowledge strain, and we will discuss potential applications and some actionable insights that can be gained by this kind of software map. Let's start with the phenomenon. Knowledge strain, and especially the risks involved with knowledge strain, are created if code is known only by a few developers. This phenomenon is also known as the so-called truck factor. This metaphor can be defined as follows. How many of you would have to be hit by a truck before the project is incapacitated? So we are talking about original developers that become, for some reasons, unavailable. For example, they leave the company, they retire, or they change the software development team within a company. So there are many reasons why some developers are not anymore available for those parts of the software system that have been in their responsibility in the past. So eventually others need to understand the code from scratch. If modules are not anymore attached to developers that are actually available, then others have to take over and have to first understand the implementation. It's in general a time-consuming and an error-prone task. So a low knowledge distribution inside a software project regarding code can lead to code known to no active developers in the long run. So this is worst situations that can occur, that there are source code units that nobody understands and nobody has modified or understood in the last years. Yeah, how can we deal with this phenomenon? We have to reveal knowledge strain potentials. Knowledge strain in the scope of software analytics can be measured based on the knowledge distribution among source code. The ideal situation would be a kind of collective code ownership. That is one principle that ensures knowledge distribution across all different source code units of a given source code project, software project. The following rules of thumb apply in general to measure the knowledge strain potentials. Generally, small units are easier to handle and therefore to understand than large units. So lines of code is a base weight that is used to estimate the knowledge strain potential. Generally, low complex modules are easier to handle than those with a high software complexity. That is, software complexity in this case is a very effective measure. And finally, based on the development history, the number of developers that are active on modules, on changing modules, fixing modules, should be taken into account. So here we have the three principal information dimensions that are involved if we would like to estimate the knowledge strain potential for a given software system. Now, these information dimensions are expressed by an appropriate software map called the Risk of Knowledge Strain software map. In this example, we have illustrated this phenomenon along the Android operating system, a part that is used here for demonstration purposes. And as we can see, there are, first glance, some modules that are green and others are red. So we use as a base measure the logical lines of code. For the footprint size, we use the height to express the nesting level complexity. In this case, it's NL4+. And the color scheme expresses how many developers are really active in the last period of time, for example, in the last 3 months, 6 months, or in the last year. If we look at this example, we can easily find that there are complex modules in terms of nesting level complexity, the tall cuboids, but they are green. So there are enough people that can handle this module, that are available and did touch this module in the recent past. Other modules, for example, these tall red cuboids, indicate, oh, that's a module which has a certain complexity, so it will be most likely hard to understand, hard to comprehend, but there are only a few developers actively working on that module. Especially red indicates in this example if only one developer has handled, touched, modified, revised a module in the given period of time. So this is how this software map works. It relates, so to say, software complexity and developer activity. More formally, we can describe the composition of this software map theme, risk of knowledge train, as follows. Logical lines of code mapped to cuboid's footprint size is used to expose monolithic code as a first and general indicator to code that is hard to manage. Lines of code in the nesting level 4+ are used and mapped to the cuboid's height to indicate complex, difficult to comprehend code. And as the key other dimension of information, the number of developers that have been active in a given period of time, such as the last 3 months, is used as an indicator for knowledge distribution mapped by a color schema. Colors are used as classification related to the number of developers during this given specific time frame. And typically we distinguish between only 3 categories: green, yellow, red, and a possible definition of these categories can be green, more than 3 developers have recently worked with the code; yellow, between 2 and 3 developers have recently worked; and red, only 1 developer or even none has recently worked with the code. So this is a typical definition of this color categorization, and it can be adapted, of course, to the specific project needs in a specific given software system or software project. Yeah, what are typical use cases and applications of this software map theme? Knowledge train is a general risk in all projects. In all projects that are based on a large number of developers. So it's a general risk in software engineering. The corresponding software maps help to identify those source code units for which a different team setting should be found in the near future, or in the long run at least. Knowledge train software maps assist here to effectively manage the handover before, for example, a developer leaves or retires. As a common practice, the leaving developers should transfer their knowledge, their individual knowledge related to some specific modules, to their successors, for example, at an early stage. This software map, of course, helps to prevent so-called orphan source code units that have been abandoned. No developer is anymore around that could help, that understands, that knows something about the source code unit. So we can systematically identify and reintegrate these orphan source code units in the team knowledge pool, in the knowledge distribution of a given software developer team. Some potential conclusions that can be drawn from these software maps include that we can ensure sufficient knowledge distribution, especially on complex code, where we can focus our activities, our measures, development measures, to achieve that sufficient knowledge distribution is there, spread across the whole project. We can introduce and apply, for example, pair programming. It's a general means to prevent isolated knowledge for source code units. We can, for example, implement peer reviews or strengthen the peer reviews in our development processes. We can also assign coding tasks to developers without knowledge about the code, with occasional help from developers who know the code quite well. So there are different means possible, but we have first to find the relevant parts inside the software systems implementation such that we can focus our activities on those relevant parts. Yeah, this concludes this part about the software map that outlines the risk of knowledge drain. It can be applied to identify complex code units that are known only by few developers and reveal knowledge distribution in general in the software systems implementation. As actionable insights, the software map can outline those parts of a source code that are most affected by, let's use it again, a bad track factor. That would be one of having the value of 1, for example. So if only one developer is hit, then the software project becomes a dangerous status because a relevant part of knowledge would disappear. And thereby to take actions that ensure better knowledge distribution. The long-term cost for the development can be reduced if we handle the risk of knowledge drain and if we take appropriate actions at an early stage. This application of software maps in the scope of software analytics also shows that the correlation of a technical structural information, such as software complexity metrics, with evolution-based developer or development metrics is a fundamental and very efficient approach to cope with subtle phenomena such as the knowledge drain risk. It's a subtle phenomena because we have to take into account the development process on the one side and some technical measures on the other side. And the software map can very effectively correlate both information dimensions, and it can be used to obtain appropriate actions, insights that help to manage this inherent risk in almost all software development projects. So this concludes this part about the map theme, risk of knowledge drain.